Hey, welcome back to my shop. Today I want to give you a little tutorial on how to make these double box joints. And this is probably my favorite joint, at least that I've done so far, because it is so vibrant and brilliant compared to a normal box joint or a lot of other joints for that matter. And there's a specific reason why every bit of this joint is very vibrant, and that's because there is no end grain showing, okay? And that's, you have to, router these in a very specific direction in order to make that happen. But when you look at a piece of wood, the face grain is always going to be the most beautiful side. The edge grain is also very pretty, and you can still see figure in it. But the end grain, you're never going to get any of that figure. It's always just going to be kind of dull. So on a normal box joint, what you're typically looking at from the side is you're going to be looking at face grain, end grain, face grain, end grain, okay? And so every part of it, there's going to be half of it that's just not quite as vibrant. But in this double box joint, we're going to run some of the wood in this direction so that you are always looking at face grain or edge grain and never end grain, okay? So you're going to want to really pay attention to which direction I'm putting the wood through the router, and I'm going to try to really point it out. All right, so I'm going to be using this old school Incra Ultra Jig. It works the same as the newer LS positioners. This one's over 20 years old, so if you are able to pick one up used, then it's definitely less expensive. That's how I found mine. It uses these little strips that have different red and blue lines with different letters on them to tell you where you need to position your fence. So this fence is going to move back and forth. You're going to line it up to whatever letter is indicated for the cut you need, and you're going to lock it into position. The book that holds these little templates also has to scale pictures of exactly what you're going to be cutting. And this is extremely helpful. So in this video, we're going to be cutting this as A and B, and then those are going to get glued together. We're going to be cutting F and E. Those will get glued together. Once they're trimmed to their final dimensions, we'll be doing C and D. So you really have to pay attention to exactly what letter you're supposed to be at. It's also very helpful to take your piece of wood and line it up and see exactly where you want to be starting from, because you want to make sure that you're going to have a good balance so that not only will the box be really pretty, but that you don't end up with some little millimeter or 2 millimeter piece of wood on an end, because that will just chip off, okay? So anyway, I hope that this is helpful throughout the video. I'll have a picture of where we're at on here in one of the corners, and I'll also show what letter that we're matched up with on the fence. So I hope this helps, and I really hope that you give a double box joint a shot, because as I said, it's vibrant, it's very pretty, and I find it to be very rewarding. I'm going to leave a picture in the lower left-hand corner of the final product so that you can kind of see which pieces of wood we're looking at. So here on the template, again, I'm going to kind of point out that we're going to cut A and B first. A is going to be our long piece of walnut, so that's going to be our long side. The two pieces that I'm looking at right now, I'm putting arrows, and those are the pieces that we're going to be routering in the opposite direction. So we're going to router at the edge of it instead of at the end of it. Okay, so I'm marking off the direction of the two sides. Again, this grain direction is very important. That's the only way we're going to avoid end grain in the final product. I'm also putting the letters on each board, just as a reminder to myself to make sure that I'm using the correct template. I'm going to be running a piece of wood in front of it and a piece behind it to try to avoid tear out as much as possible. Particularly when you're routering the edge side of it, it is prone to chip out. All boards must be milled to the exact same thickness so that the box joint, when it comes together at the very end, is perfect. And so here I'm just going to set the router bit at just the slightest hair above the thickness of my material. I'm not particularly talented with the wood hand screws that a lot of people use with the LS positioner, and so this homemade sled with this Craig clamp works a little bit better for me. So you just want to make sure that everything is totally tight to the fence and all the way, down to the bottom of the table as well. So we're going to be making A's cuts right now. All right, then you're going to flip the boards straight over so that the same, side or the same edge is going to be against the fence. And then you're going to do the exact same thing again. And you always want to start with the fence forward and keep moving it back, because that way, when you're doing some of these that require 2 passes to get the full width, you're going to be using the correct side of the bit. Now we're going to start on cut B, and notice again the grain direction now is going to be going sideways instead of up and down when you clamp it down. So we're going to be routering out the edge of the board. Again, this is very important. It is more prone to chip out this way, but this is the direction that allows us to avoid end grain. All right, moment of truth, it all lined up. So that's always very, very exciting. You can see I can put pieces together. We're gonna have to cut those Padauk pieces in half here. That's how we're gonna get the 4 sides to go on each side of the walnut. They don't have to be perfectly in half. They're gonna be trimmed down later to just only about 1/8 of an inch off the edge of the walnut. I'm applying plenty of glue here, and I use a little brush to make sure that I get good distribution everywhere. And then I'm just going to apply a little bit of light clamp pressure. It doesn't take a lot. These are a pretty nice snug fit as is. So now we're moving on to cut F, and this is going to be the Padauk side of the box, so the short side. And so the grain direction is going to be running up and down in this clamped position. Okay, so we're cutting the ends of the board at this time. All right, so that's board F. So now we're going to make E cuts. And again, notice we're going to be switching the grain direction here. We're going to be doing the edge of the board again for the walnut. So when I line up the second one here, the first one fits nice and tight. And then when I line up the next board, I notice that there's a little bit of a gap. And you see that gap? That's going to be a problem because that has to be strong enough to withstand the router going through that joint again. So that piece of walnut was maybe just a hair high when it was going through its cut. So just by sanding down this a little bit, I'm going to be able to get a nice tight fit. Now these boards have to be trimmed down, and I want just about 1/8 of an inch of the padauk left on the outside of those walnut pins. And so I'm just going to kind of inch up to this. So then I sand it at 120, 220, and 320. I won't bore you with watching that. Then I'm going to hit it with some lacquer. We'll do at least 3 coats of lacquer. And you can really just see it come to life. That's definitely my favorite step. So I did add a 1/4-inch Baltic birch divider in here, and since I'm flocking it, it doesn't matter what type of wood is used. I just did that because I think I'm probably going to end up using this for like pens and pencils and highlighters or something, and so the divider will help keep everything in place better. And so here I'm going to flock this, and I do have a video that goes into greater detail on flocking if you're interested. I personally think it's pretty hard to beat those results. So I hope that you've enjoyed this video. If you do, like and subscribe, and have a great day.